With a Cisco wireless LAN controller and a Samsung client or an Intel client, you can pretty much do what you see here, which is build a heat map of your floor. So I've built a small script to do that, and a lot of people have been asking me how the script works. So let me drive you through how you can do it in your network. Essentially, you need to have a controller, of course, and then you need to have a Samsung client or an Intel client. And when you get to your controller, first make sure that your client is connected. You should see it in Show Wireless Client Summary. You see my test client is right there. Your client also needs to be a Samsung or an Intel device, which means that it should be supporting what we call beacon reports. This is something you can check by just typing the command Show Wireless Client MAC Address Detail, and then you look at the section that's called Radio Measurement. And as you can see here, that client supports what we care about, which is passive beacon measurement, active beacon measurement, and table beacon measurement. Next, you just need to make sure that your SSID is enabled for a feature which is called MBO on the Cisco network, which is the ability for the AP and the client to exchange on those questions about asking the client to go and report on beacons it hears. So you go conft, you edit your SSID. In my case, it's called corporate. You have to shut it first, and then you have to set enable MBO, no shut, and then you save, and your controller is ready. Make sure your client reassociates. Of course, as I did shut, it's probably disconnected the client, but once you have that, you're ready to go. Then you need laptop. Here I'm using Mac, so please, this is a research project. I'm not going to productize this, so if you use another system, just look up the instructions for that particular system. But here, I want to set up a very small web server on my laptop so that I can go on the floor and click the place where I am, and then the script is automatically going to connect to my client, collect the view of the client on the network, save that in a file, and then I'll be able to process that file to do the graphing I was telling you about. So here I'm using node.js. It's a very simple web server which is self-contained. Don't fear anything. It's just a small file that's running on your system, and when you run that node.js file, it's going to activate a web server that's going to be running on this port by default 3000. So the way it looks is that I have a small folder that you'll find also on the GitHub, where you have this server.js, which is essentially that file that you're going to activate. And the way you run it is to install node.js. Again, you have the instructions on the GitHub, and then you activate node server.js, which is the file where I am. I'm in the website folder here. And as you do that, it's going to launch that web server. So you have in the same folder the file that you need. You're running index.html file, and you need to run that script here, which is going to do the data collection, and you'll be saving data in the different files. I'll go through it. So the first thing the server is going to ask you is the IP address of your controller will be connecting to, so that you can talk to your client. In my case, it's this IP address. Of course, you need for that controller the username and password. And then you need the client MAC address, the client you're going to be using for that test. So as you saw before, my client was this guy, 28C2 something. So I'm going to copy and paste that into the web server. Once I click submit, the system is going to ask me to upload a floor plan. So my expectation, because it's a simple system, is that the upper left corner is 0, 0, and then your floor plan has a width and a height. So I'm going to ask you right after you upload, what is the coordinate of the bottom right corner, so I have the width and the height of the floor. So I'm going to pick up this floor plan, which is a random thing, and then as you see, it's going to ask you the coordinates of the bottom right. In my case, it's 100 meter wide and about 50 meter high. So I'm putting this here, and then my floor plan is available. Now you're ready to go. You can take that server with you. You can connect from your phone if you want to, if you're connecting there, or you can use that laptop and carry it around with you. And then every time you're going to go to a place where you want to get a measurement from your client, all you do here is you click on the map where you are. And the system is going to do two things. It's going to take that point and save it in a place which is called locations, which is the list of all the points you've visited as you were traversing your floor, from left to right, from right to left. So each point is going to be in order, and you'll find that in this locations file. Let me go back to it so we can have a look. you'll have each point where you were, X and Y coordinates of the point where you clicked, of course, at the scale of your floor, right? So at the end, when you have walked the entire floor, you have here a column with all the points you visited. And then in the output file, every time you click, the script is going to connect to your controller and is going to send a command that you'll see again in this collect data ext script if you want to have the details. But it's going to connect your client to a controller and it's going to ask your client to do the scan report and get back to what it has, every SSID it finds. That's the action. But then if you want to see what the output is on the controller, you also have to run this command where you list whatever the client has found. So be careful. I'm using a script here which is called SSH pass. This is again a research project. This is unsafe, right? Because I'm going to save in the clear your credentials to your controller, so don't put that into production. Don't say I didn't tell you. This was not safe. This is just on your laptop, for you to experiment. So it's going to save the information into location.txt. And then in the output file, it's going to save what you see here, which is the data that the client has collected as he was traversing all these channels. So you see the MAC address, the BSSID, the channels, etc. for all the reports the client has done. Right, so that is what you're going to do as you collect data throughout the floor. In the end, you'll have a bunch of locations in the location.txt file. You have a bunch of reports here, for every location where you clicked and you collected that information. So the next step is to be able to graph that and do something pretty. So I've done that also in Python. You'll see that we have two scripts in the GitHub. One is what I call data prep, and what it does essentially is to take that output file and it's going to basically format it in a way where you can just get the RSSI and the BSSIDs. So what I've done in between, in the last seconds, I've copied that file into this input subfolder. In fact, I've also renamed it scan reports. But you can of course change the path here. And if you use Jupyter Notebook, it's fairly simple. All you need to do essentially is to run those commands one after the other. You press Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter, and it's going to essentially create the input.csv file, which is going to be a nicely formulated file where you have everything you need. So if I go into that file, let me go there so you can have a look. You see that it takes both files, locations, and it takes the RSSI, and essentially it takes all the X and Y for each location, and it's going to take each BSSID and give you the and give you the RSSI you got at this location. What is nice about the Samsung device is that it also gives you the cellular connection strength, with the number of bars you have, like you have in Android. So you have this nice presentation here from this data prep data. And then all you have to do left, is to run this heatmap system where you'll be able to essentially plot this heatmap as I was showing you before. Same as before, you just load that stuff and then you do Shift Enter until you have, the output, which is where you have all the data of all the images. Of course, you can, each of them is an access point, right? So you have the heatmap for each of the access points with the MAC address of the access point on the side. And that gives you for each AP on your floor the heat map of that AP. Okay, all of that is a bit fast, of course, but go step by step through the GitHub. And as usual, you know where to find me. Reach out if you have any need for any help.